If you have ever felt a woman slowly, almost imperceptibly, lose respect for you, but you couldn't pinpoint the exact moment everything went off the rails, listen very closely. What you are about to learn will forever change how you view every interaction with women. Here is the harsh truth that no one wants to admit out loud. Women don't start treating men poorly just by accident, by chance, or by mistake. It only happens when a man fails to build the necessary barriers himself. He misses the moment. In those very first weeks and months of getting to know each other, there are 5 critical frontiers that determine absolutely everything. They decide whether she sees you as a man worthy of admiration or a man she can use and then forget. Miss even one of these frontiers, and you will spend the next 6 months in confusion, trying to please, overextending yourself, and guessing why the spark went out. This isn't about being a harsh tyrant or playing manipulative games. It's not about treating women badly. This is about understanding the precise psychological moments where men unknowingly surrender their power. And more importantly, how to stop doing that before attraction turns into contempt. Most relationship advice teaches men how to react when everything has already collapsed. This material will teach you how to position yourself so that nothing collapses in the first place. The difference isn't in tricks or rehearsed lines. The difference is in structure. Boundaries create structure, and structure determines who leads the dance and who follows. If you are ready to stop guessing and start understanding, dive into this breakdown, because once you see the mechanics of these processes, you will stop chasing results and start controlling your position. And that shift begins with the very first barrier that 90% of men ignore. Frontier 1. Financial mystery. Never reveal your cards until she has earned it. Men make a fundamental error here. They confuse transparency with building trust. You think talking about money early on is just casual conversation. You believe it makes you look open, real, successful. But on the other side of the table, it is perceived completely differently. To a woman, early financial information isn't intimacy. It is intelligence gathering. The second you start discussing your income, your investments, how much you paid for your new car, or what expensive hotel you're planning for vacation, an irreversible shift occurs. You stop being the mystery man she wants to discover, and you become the resource man she starts to calculate. And I'm not talking about an emotional calculation, but a strictly practical, utilitarian one. This is what I call the provider interview. Think about it. She hasn't chosen you yet. She hasn't signed up for anything. She hasn't emotionally invested in you as a couple, but you are already standing on stage, waving reports around, proving your utility. The most dangerous part here is that you don't even notice it happening. If you are ready to stop guessing and start understanding, dive into this breakdown, because once you see the mechanics of these processes, you will stop chasing results and start controlling your position. And that shift begins with the very first barrier that 90% of men ignore. Frontier 1. Financial mystery. Never reveal your cards until she has earned it. Men make a fundamental error here. They confuse transparency with building trust. You think talking about money early on is just casual conversation. You believe it makes you look open, real, successful, but on the other side of the table, it is perceived completely differently. To a woman, early financial information isn't intimacy. It is intelligence gathering. The second you start discussing your income, your investments, how much you paid for your new car, or what expensive hotel you're planning for vacation, an irreversible shift occurs. You stop being the mystery man she wants to discover, and you become the resource man she starts to calculate. And I'm not talking about an emotional calculation, but a strictly practical, utilitarian one. This is what I call the provider interview. Think about it. She hasn't chosen you yet. She hasn't signed up for anything. She hasn't emotionally invested in you as a couple, but you are already standing on stage, waving reports around, proving your utility. The most dangerous part here is that you don't even notice it happening. Imagine the situation. You're having dinner with a girl. Let's say her name is Jessica. You casually mention your salary. You joke about a recent bonus. You talk about plans to buy a house by the end of the year. It seems to you that the conversation is flowing easily. But in her mind, a quiet, cold evaluation process launches. Financial stability check, resource capacity high, potential access open. From this moment, attraction stops being a pure emotion and becomes an evaluation sheet. Here is the truth that stings. As soon as a woman starts evaluating your bank account, she stops feeling you as a man. Curiosity turns into calculation. Sexual tension is replaced by a practical assessment of assets. And here's the catch. She doesn't even need to ask you for money for this shift to happen. She just needs to observe how freely you expose your financial reality, how badly you crave to prove that you can provide. Society has taught men that provision equals value, that financial security triggers desire. But in the early stages of dating, provision doesn't create attraction. It replaces it. You stop being the one she wants and become the one who is useful to her. That is why this frontier is so important. If the frame of perception changes, it is impossible to play it back. You cannot talk your way back into mystery. You cannot charm her if you have already been filed under the category of convenient wallet. This especially applies to moments when you try to solve her financial problems too early. This is a role that lowers your status, and most guys don't see it. The moment you say, "Don't worry, I'll handle it," before there are any serious commitments between you, you voluntarily take on responsibility without authority. You offer resources without having status. Once this dynamic hardens, it becomes as solid as concrete. She might be grateful to you, but gratitude is not desire. Appreciation is not passion. This is exactly where the financial tests begin. They are subtle. She mentions in passing how tight money is right now, a bill that's stressing her out, a car repair she can't afford. She isn't asking directly. She is observing. She is watching how quickly you rush to save her. She is checking if your boundaries will collapse at the slightest pressure. Most men fail here because they confuse generosity with leadership. They rush to help, thinking it demonstrates their strength. In reality, it demonstrates predictability, and predictable men are sent to the utility zone, not the bedroom. The correct boundary requires no excuses or defense. You don't explain yourself. You don't apologize. You remain calm and grounded. You close the door without slamming it. Something simple works. She complains about a tough financial period. You reply, "Sounds stressful. I hope you managed to figure it all out." No offer of help. No guilt. And here is what will surprise many. A woman who genuinely likes you will instantly respect this. Not because she stops testing you, but because she feels safe next to a man who guards his resources and structure. A woman with murky intentions will feel irritation. She might pull away. That is not a loss. That is filtration working exactly as intended. Leadership begins where access is controlled. Frontier 2, zero tolerance for disrespect, especially when it's hidden. Many men think disrespect looks obvious. Yelling, insults, open hostility. That is why they miss the hit when it actually counts. Real disrespect doesn't announce itself through a megaphone. It creeps in quietly and waits to see if you will stop it. It shows up when she interrupts you mid-sentence and keeps talking as if nothing happened. When she makes a passive joke at your expense and then adds, "I'm just kidding. Relax." When she compares you to an ex unfavorably. When she ignores your messages for hours but demands an instant reply from you. None of these moments seem significant enough to cause a scene, and that is precisely why they are so effective. From a psychological standpoint, this isn't necessarily malice. It is testing. She is asking one silent question: can I get away with this? Female psychology tests boundaries the same way. Water looks for cracks in a dam. Slowly, gradually, drop by drop. If the wall doesn't push back, the pressure increases. Picture a scenario that many recognize but rarely handle. Let's say you are at a party with her and her friends. Everyone is laughing, chatting. Someone asks how things are going with you two. She smirks and says something like, "Well, He's an all-right guy when he's not being clueless. Her friends laugh. She laughs. You smile. You tell yourself it's harmless banter, that she didn't mean anything bad by it. But something happened. She publicly lowered your status. She used you as entertainment. And, most importantly, she watched what you would do next. Disrespect tests aren't about the comment itself. They are about your reaction or your lack of one. When you let it slide, you don't look easygoing or mature. You signal that your self-respect is negotiable, that social comfort is more important to you than your own boundaries. And once a woman realizes she can step over you without consequences, she will do it again. Not because she is a villain, but because you showed her. The line does not exist. Silence in these moments is not composure. Silence is permission. This is the mistake men make, convincing themselves that staying quiet makes them look unbothered. In reality, you are broadcasting a simple and destructive thought. This behavior is acceptable. When you don't react to subtle disrespect, you create a precedent. And precedents have a habit of accumulating. One small pass turns into another, then a third, until the dynamic shifts so far that fixing it becomes impossible. The chain reaction men don't foresee. When she disrespects you publicly and you stay silent, her friends notice. They don't see you as her guy. They see a man who cannot stand up for himself. Their perception changes first, then hers follows. Because once a woman sees that you tolerate humiliation in public, she understands she can do it in private too. The tone changes. The effort on her part drops. Attraction erodes not overnight, but permanently. High-value men don't react to disrespect with emotional explosions or sarcasm. They don't try to humiliate her back. They don't create drama. They respond immediately, calmly, and directly. One short phrase works flawlessly. You look her in the eye and calmly say, "Don't talk to me in that tone." No anger, no explanations, no emotional charge. Just a clear line in the sand. This response does something powerful. It resets the frame. It tells her and everyone watching that you respect yourself enough to stop disrespect the moment it appears. This isn't about controlling her behavior. It is about enforcing your standards. Because respect is not negotiated through patience. It is not earned by endurance. And it is definitely not preserved by silence. Respect is enforced. Frontier 3. Your time is a scarcity. Never make it freely available just because you like her. Here, most men sabotage themselves before the relationship even has time to form. You think availability demonstrates interest. You think instant agreement proves your enthusiasm. You rearrange your schedule to show you're invested. From her perspective, it looks completely different. When a man is always available, it is not a signal of desire. It is a signal of a lack of structure. And women don't evaluate a man in a vacuum. They evaluate the life that surrounds him. Here is the pattern. You meet, let's say, Rachel. The chemistry is real. The attention is promising. And because you don't want to miss the chance, you start doing something subtle but destructive. You cancel plans. You shift commitments. You stay flexible, just in case. She texts. And suddenly, dinner with friends vanishes from your schedule. The gym session is skipped. Your schedule becomes reactive, not intentional. Not because you are irresponsible, but because you are afraid of losing momentum. And that fear is exactly what she senses. From a psychological perspective, a woman isn't just asking herself, "Does he like me?" She is asking, "Does this man have a life that can hold me without collapsing?" When your time becomes an open buffet, she doesn't feel chosen. She feels she is being placed above everything else for no reason. And, paradoxically, this lowers attraction. Men believe scarcity pushes women away. In reality, the absence of structure pushes them away faster. A man who drops everything the moment she appears doesn't look committed. He looks like a ship without an anchor. And women don't trust men who have nothing holding them. This boundary isn't about playing hard to get. It is about protecting the foundation of your life. Because when your time loses value, you lose value too. A man who treats his time like currency is always in demand, not because he is playing a role, but because his life has direction before she entered it. When you protect your schedule, a powerful shift happens in her mind. She stops seeing you as an option she can summon with a snap of her fingers and starts seeing a man she needs to reach for. Time creates anticipation only when it is not given on demand. Here is what this looks like in practice. Let's say she texts late at night, wanting to see you spontaneously, but you have an early start, a workout planned, or a meeting you already confirmed. The low-value move, ditching your plans and rushing to her, hoping it proves your interest. The grounded man's move is simple. Can't tonight. Let's plan something for the weekend. Calm. No spiral of excuses. You acknowledge her, but you don't rearrange your life for an impulse. This answer does two things simultaneously. It shows your time carries weight, and it makes the time you do give her intentional, not just convenient. There is an important distinction. Being just busy is not attractive. Purpose is attractive. A man with a purpose doesn't need to fake scarcity. His schedule reflects his priorities. His life has momentum, and women feel that difference instantly. When your time is protected, attraction has space to grow. When your time is unlimited, attraction suffocates. You don't win by being constantly present. You win by being consistently grounded. Frontier 4. Don't become her emotional therapist before she commits. This is one of the most seductive traps men fall into because it masquerades as a deep connection. She opens up early, talks about her ex, past traumas, family chaos, about how every man before you hurt her. She cries on the phone, tells you she has never felt so understood, and you think, this must mean something. This is intimate. This is special. I'm different for her. But emotional dumping is not intimacy. It is recruitment. What is actually happening is simple. She is testing how much emotional cargo you are willing to carry before she gives you anything real in return. And most men volunteer, not realizing the price. You listen for hours. You reassure. You stay up late comforting her. You give advice. You absorb her emotional weight. You become steady, reliable, safe. And slowly, quietly, the frame shifts. You are no longer the man she desires. You are the man she uses to stabilize herself. Here is the part that hurts the most. Men mistake emotional access for emotional bonding. They think, she trusts me. What they don't see is that trust without investment on her part doesn't create attraction. It creates utility. She leans on you and then turns around and gives her excitement, her curiosity, her unpredictability to someone else. Not because you did something bad, but because you stepped into the role of therapist instead of the role of partner. Masculine polarity dies the moment you become her emotional container too early. Mystery fades, tension dissolves, desire becomes flat, and you cannot logically argue your way out of this position. Once you're emotionally categorized as the safe safety vest, that label sticks permanently. This boundary isn't about being a cold brick wall. It is about pacing intimacy, because when you carry her emotional weight before she chooses you, you give away your strongest leverage. Emotional intimacy is currency, and like any currency, it devalues when it is handed out without counter-investments. Here is the distinction many miss. You can be present without taking responsibility. You can listen without shouldering the load. You can show care without falling into her emotional chaos. The mistake isn't in empathy. The mistake is in overextension. When you rush to absorb her pain, heal her wounds, and stabilize her emotions before any commitment, you reverse the natural flow of attachment. She doesn't become closer to the man who carries her. She becomes closer to the man she invests in. That is how healthy emotional attachment forms. Healthy emotional pacing looks different. You listen, you validate that you hear her, you remain calm, but you don't dive into problem-solver mode. You don't become the late-night crisis hotline. You don't let her emotional storms dictate your availability or your state of mind. This boundary protects masculine polarity. Polarity exists when there is tension, space, and mutual effort. It dies when one person becomes the emotional anchor while the other drifts freely. Men often think that by pulling back emotionally, they seem indifferent. In reality, it makes the connection cleaner. It invites reciprocity. It gives her the opportunity to step forward emotionally, instead of leaning back onto you. And this is the key shift. A woman bonds with the man she invests her emotions in, not the one who carries her emotional baggage for free. When she has to show up, when she has to contribute, when she has to regulate herself, attraction deepens naturally. This boundary doesn't block intimacy, it preserves it. Because intimacy that isn't earned builds dependence, not desire. And dependence is the opposite of attraction. Frontier 5. Never panic when she pulls away. This is the moment where most men cross out everything they did right before. Everything was going well, the energy was high, the connection felt mutual, and suddenly, something changes. Her replies slow down, the warmth fades, the effort drops. And instead of staying calm, you panic. This panic is instinctive. You feel the distance and assume something is wrong. Maybe she is stressed. Maybe you said the wrong thing. Maybe there is someone else. Let's say some Brian from work. And, without realizing it, you start doing the single thing guaranteed to kill attraction. You start trying harder while she does less. Usually, this unfolds through 3 predictable mistakes. First, you fill the silence. She creates space, and you rush to close it. More messages, faster replies, extra "how are you" checks. In reality, you are saying, "I am uncomfortable without your attention." Second, you try to reassure her or validate your feelings. You offer emotional availability on demand. You let it be known that you are always there, no matter what happens. Every word quietly broadcasts fear. Fear of losing her. Fear that the connection is slipping away. Third, you overcompensate. You plan more dates, give more compliments, provide more resources. You turn the volume up to maximum, hoping that effort will restore what distance took away. But attraction doesn't work that way. From a power dynamic perspective, the moment you increase effort in response to her withdrawal, the balance collapses. She holds the frame, you run after it. And once this imbalance is fixed, desire suffocates. A woman cannot miss a man who is constantly trying to close the gap. She can only miss someone who has the space to disappear. Pulling away isn't always a test. Sometimes it is clarity forming. Sometimes it is fading interest. And sometimes it is just life. But panic turns any of these reasons into the same outcome: loss of leverage, loss of attraction, loss of self-respect. Attraction never returns because you tried harder. It returns when absence appears. This is a paradox. Most men resist because it feels counterintuitive. You are taught that persistence solves problems, that tenacity proves value, that if you just show up more, love will stabilize. But romantic attraction does not respond to effort. It responds to space. When you stop rewarding distance with increased attention, one of 2 things happens, and both outcomes work in your favor. If she is genuinely interested, she recalibrates. She will notice the absence. She will feel the void where your attention used to be. The imbalance will correct itself. Her efforts will rise to meet yours. Stability will return not because you chased it, but because you gave it room to manifest. If she doesn't return, it means the truth was already on the surface. Your boundary didn't cause the loss, it simply revealed it faster. This is exactly where men get stuck emotionally. They think, if I step back, I'll lose her. What they don't see is that they were already losing themselves trying to keep her close. Never reward distance with effort. Effort given in response to coldness trains imbalance. It teaches her that she can lower her investment while you raise yours. And once this lesson is learned, attraction does not recover. Absence does what effort can never do. It restores polarity. It returns control to your side of the equation. It reminds her that access to you is not guaranteed. And if she chooses not to step forward when space is created, it means you didn't lose a woman who wanted you. You stopped chasing an illusion that required you to abandon your core. Here is the quiet power of this boundary. It doesn't manipulate the outcome. It clarifies it. You didn't lose her. You just stopped chasing something that never fully belonged to you. The finale, the system of value. What you have just learned isn't a collection of pickup tricks. It is a system. 5 frontiers, 1 framework, 1 goal, protecting your value before someone else decides what it is worth. These boundaries are not about controlling women. They are not about manipulation, and certainly not about becoming a cold or distant cynic. They exist for one reason only: to keep you from losing yourself while trying to keep someone else. When you control financial access, you protect leverage. When you cut off disrespect at the root, you protect dignity. When you guard your time, you protect the direction of your life. When you pace emotional intimacy, you protect polarity. When you stop chasing those who pull away, you protect self-respect. Together, they form a filter. Women who are attracted to structure, strength, and self-control will feel safer with you. Women who are only comfortable when you give too much, are too available, and invest too heavily will quietly disappear. This isn't loneliness. This is clarity. Boundaries don't make you hard to love. They make it possible for the right person to love you without requiring you to shrink to a convenient size just to be tolerated. They guarantee that when a woman chooses you, she chooses the man you actually are, not the version that sacrifices himself for approval. And if there is one truth I want you to walk away with today, it is this: you don't gain power by demanding more from women. You gain power by requiring more from yourself. If this resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to the Psycharia channel. Stay here. This channel exists for men who are tired of being confused, tired of being drained, and doubting their worth. Like this video, share it with a friend who keeps giving too much and getting too little. And write in the comments which of the 5 frontiers hit you the hardest.